All right, welcome to lesson 1.2. We're going to talk about terrestrial biomes today. So in our last lesson, we talked just about how we characterize them. This lesson is going to be a little bit longer and is going to talk about each of the biomes that we're going to focus on in this class. So learning objective is that you'll be able to describe the characteristics of each major terrestrial biome. So we've seen a graph like this before. This is showing annual precipitation going up on the y-axis and then annual temperature over here on the x-axis. So 0 right here. This is Celsius. So 0 degrees Celsius is where we see it freezing temperatures. And then up here, 30 degrees Celsius is toasty. All right, so tundra is going to be the coldest and also dry. When we get to hot and dry, we got a desert. If it's hot and it rains a lot, tropical rainforest, and everything in between. So we're going to start with the desert. So when we talk about biomes, we're going to talk about precipitation patterns and temperature. So first off, for deserts, precipitation is less than 25 centimeters. So it's not no precipitation for some deserts, but it's very, very little. It's distributed unevenly throughout the year. So remember, we're not always just looking at how much, but also the pattern. So unevenly throughout the year. Lack of water is the primary factor that defines a desert. And the temperature is that it tends to be hot. We did see on that graph there is cold deserts, but most deserts are hot. Deserts are likely to be windy. They experience large daily temperature fluctuations, really hot during the day and cooler at night. There is infrequent cloud cover and not a lot of rain, not a lot of humidity, means not a lot of clouds. And there are many species, but they are present in low numbers. So pretty good diversity, but very low population sizes. And many species exhibit specialized adaptations to climate, such as the ability to conserve water. Like cactuses are, they have really thick stems so that they can hold a lot of water in there. And then human impact. We're going to talk about each biome and then cover the human impact. Humans have historically had little impact on deserts. Not a great place for us to live, so we didn't affect them too much. However, now with the technology and money that we have, it allows for us to transport water into the desert so that people can live there. So we have developed a lot of cities in some desert areas and some limited agriculture as a result of irrigation. All right, temperate grassland. Precipitation 25 to 75 centimeters annually, and it is temperate. That means a moderate temperature, not too hot, not too cold. So temperate grasslands are also known as prairies or steppes, and they typically receive, like I said, 25 to 75 centimeters of annual precipitation. Fire is an important force in preventing the invasion of trees and releasing nutrients from dead plants in the soil. So fires in grasslands are natural. That should be happening just at a specific at specific times, and it does serve the ecosystem. That's not saying we should set anything on fire, but naturally it happens in these biomes. The primary consumers are large herds of migratory grazing mammals. Many insect species are also common. That's why here we have so many insects, because we are in a grassland. So human impact, most of the moist grasslands of the world have been converted to agriculture. That's why there is so much agriculture in like the Midwest of the US, because it was grasslands. Most of the drier grasslands have been converted to the raising of domesticated grazers like sheep, cattle, goats, like in Texas. Little undisturbed grassland is left because it was so suited for humans to be there. But those fragments that remain need to be preserved as refugees for the grassland species that once occupied huge portions of the globe. All right, savanna, similar to a grassland, but not quite. Precipitation is 50 to 150 centimeters. It is warm, tropical. Found in the tropical parts of Africa, South America, and Australia. They are characterized by extensive grasslands spotted with occasional patches of trees. Rainfall patterns produce a seasonally structured ecosystem, and fire is a common feature. Many trees are involved in nitrogen fixation. That means the trees help to fix the nitrogen into a usable form for other plants. And for human impact, savannas have been heavily impacted by agriculture, just like grasslands. Because of long periods of drought, raising crops is difficult without irrigation. All right, Mediterranean shrublands, also known as chaparral. Both of those terms are fair game. but we'll kind of switch between the two. I think I more often say chaparral. So precipitation, 40 to 100 centimeters annually. And on these little graphs over here, this is our temperature up here. So we can see the seasonality difference, and then precipitation is going to be down there. So temperature is moderate, not too hot, not too cold. Mediterranean shrublands are located near oceans and are dominated by shrubby plants. Their climate features wet, cool winters and hot, dry summers. They receive 40 to 100 centimeters of annual precipitation. The biome is typical of the Mediterranean coast, coastal Southern California, as well as parts of Africa, Chile, and Australia. So it is coastal, so it's along the coast. So if an area doesn't have a coastline, like Oklahoma, we're not going to see this biome. And then vegetation is dominated by woody shrubs adapted to hot, dry summers. We don't see a whole lot of big trees. It really is just like little shrubs, which is why it's called a shrubland. And fire is a common feature. We're going to see this a lot. Fire is natural in some cases. Human impact. Very little undisturbed Mediterranean shrubland still exists. We have disturbed most of it because it was so great for us to live in. Agriculture is common, often with the aid of irrigation. Even though it's next to water, it's next to coastal water, which we cannot use for our crops. Major cities are located in this biome because it's comfortable. There's water nearby, all of the nice things that we want to live by, this biome typically has. All right, tropical dry forest. So tropical means hot. Dry means not as much water. So precipitation is 50 to 200 centimeters, and it's warm. Tropical dry forest is another biome heavily influenced by seasonal rainfall. These biomes are found in Central and South America, Australia, Africa, and Asia. Many exhibit a monsoon climate with highly seasonal rainfall. So it's a dry forest, but obviously it's not getting no rain. It's getting quite a bit. It just gets it all in one like dumping season of rain. And then plants have developed special adaptations to survive drought and typically also the flooding that would come with that much rain. So human impact. Many of these forests occur in areas of high human population. Harvesting of wood for fuel and building materials has heavily affected these forests. And many of the forests have been converted to farming for the grazing of animals. We cut down the trees, we needed the trees, now we have empty land, let's raise some animals. That's what we did to dry forests. All right, tropical rainforest. We love tropical rainforests. Tropical rainforests get 200 plus centimeters of rain annually. It's a rainforest. There's a lot of rain there. And it's tropical, which means it's warm. Tropical rainforests are located near the equator where the temperature is relatively warm and constant. Most areas receive 200 plus centimeters of annual rainfall. Some receive in excess of 500 centimeters. The soil allows high levels of leaching, and so most nutrients are tied up in biomass. So this means if we go to a tropical rainforest and we look at the soil, there is not a lot of nutrients there because it's constantly being rained on, and that rain basically clears out that soil of nutrients. We will talk about soil specifically in another unit, but while tropical rainforests are amazing because of the high biodiversity, the soil is not very nutritious. Tropical rainforests have multi-layered canopy. We have lots and lots of different trees, plants, everything, all the layers. There's a lot going on. And epiphytic plants. So epiphytic plants are plants that live on another plant. They're not parasitic. They're not taking nutrients. They just are borrowing the height of that plant. They also host a very high diversity of species. Tropical rainforests are the most biodiverse biome that we have here on Earth. Tropical rainforests are under intense pressure from logging and agriculture. We like to cut down trees. Many of the countries where tropical rainforests occur are poor and seek to obtain jobs and money by exploiting this resource. So they are selling this resource in order to help gain economic standing, and they're usually selling that resource to more developed countries like the US, who has already used a lot of our resources. And forestry can be sustainable, but in many cases it is not. You can cut down a tree and another tree will grow there, but it takes a long time for a tree to grow as tall as the one you cut down. So in order for it to be sustainable, you have to be cutting down trees at a rate that they can then grow back before you're going back through again. And that's usually not happening. All right, temperate deciduous forests get 75 to 100 centimeters annually, and it is temperate, so moderate temperatures. And you can see this precipitation. It's pretty consistent, maybe a tiny bit more in the summer. And the temperature does range pretty dramatically. Temperate deciduous forests are typical of the eastern half of the U.S., south central and southeastern Canada, and southern Africa, and many parts of Europe and Asia. Trees typically lose their leaves during the winter and replace them the following spring. That's what deciduous means. This biome features mild winters and a long growing season, so 6 months. In contrast to tropical rainforests, where individuals of a tree species are scattered throughout the forest, temperate deciduous forests have many fewer species. Some may have 2 or 3 dominant tree species. So it's not very biodiverse when we're looking at the plant life there. When you walk into a deciduous forest, it's going to be almost all the same tree, maybe a few different, so not super biodiverse. It's very consistent in what species are there. So human impact, most of the temperate deciduous forests have been heavily impacted by human activity. Much has been cleared for farming. Anywhere that's temperate, that means it's pretty comfortable for us to live. And forests, again, we like to cut down trees for wood. That's how we build houses. So the human impact is going to be really heavy here. Much of the current forest is subjected to periodic logging. And major population centers of eastern North America and Europe are in areas that were originally temperate deciduous forests. They are no longer because we have cut down the trees. All right, temperate rainforest. So precipitation is 130 to 300 centimeters annually. Precipitation is not evenly spread. It's a lot more this is August, September, October, but it does rain year round. And it is temperate, so not super hot. Temperate rainforests exist in coastal areas of Northern California, Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, Southern Alaska, New Zealand, and the southwest coast of Chile. They also are Miss Howard's favorite biome because this is my temperate rainforests are my happy place. West winds bring moist air to the coast. The air is forced over the mountains, cools, and rain or snow is produced. The cool climate slows evaporation and things are generally damp. Fertile soil, mild temperatures, and water result in a lush growth of plants. They really are gorgeous. All right, so human impact. Because of the rich resource of trees, at least half of the original temperate rainforest has been logged. Many remaining forests are scheduled to be logged or are actively being logged. Some patches have been protected because they were home to endangered northern spotted owls, this guy right here, and the marbled murrelet, a seabird. All right, taiga, northern coniferous forest or boreal forest. Precipitation is 25 to 100 centimeters annually, and it is cool. Throughout the southern half of Canada, parts of northern Europe, and much of Russia, there's an evergreen coniferous forest known as the taiga, and northern coniferous forest or boreal forest. So all of these things are the same thing. Coniferous means conifers. It's trees that produce cones, and most of those are evergreen trees, so they don't lose their leaves. Features short, cool summers and long winters with abundant snowfall. Climate is humid because of the great deal of spring snowmelt. Low temperatures reduce evaporation, so it keeps a lot more of that water down there. The trees are adapted to winter conditions, so they have needle-shaped leaves that prevent water loss and flexible branches so that the snow doesn't break them, it just kind of pushes them down a little bit. So for human impact, it's less severe because it's cold. So we have a much lower population density there. Logging is common. Again, trees, we're going to cut them down. Herding of reindeer occurs in northern Scandinavia. And last but not least is tundra. So tundra, remember that was dry and cold. So temperature does vary, but it is all cold. Less than 25 centimeters of rain or precipitation. North of the taiga is the tundra, an extremely cold region that lacks trees and is permanently frozen subsurface soil. So the first layer of soil below the surface is frozen permanently. And that is called permafrost. That layer of frozen soil is called permafrost. This biome has a short, wet summer. Waterlogged soils and shallow ponds and pools are present in the spring and summer, but they freeze in the winter. And plants are usually less than 20 centimeters tall. They're really small because they can't put their roots too far down because it's, frozen. Tundra-like communities known as alpine tundra are found on mountaintops throughout the world. So remember, not only does how far you are from the equator affect the biome, but also the elevation up a mountain can also change the biome. So human impact, it's really cold. So not a whole lot of people live here. There are local native people who often rely on subsistence hunting for food. And then because of the very short growing season, damage to this kind of ecosystem is slow to heal, so the land must be handled with great care. All right, that is our biome. So I know this was a much longer video than we would normally do. Hopefully you got those notes filled out to go along with this. And if you have any questions, please let me know, and I will see you in the next one.